Now, at this time tomorrow, we'll be knee-deep in the council roundup, our weekly review of what happens at the Springfield City Council meetings. Tonight is a committee of the whole, so they've got a whole bunch of ordinances that they'll determine go on either the consent agenda, which are non-controversial, or if they go on the debate agenda to have further discussion at the following full city council meeting. So obviously there's a lot that they're going to tackle. So let's take a look at some of that. If you pull up the Springfield City Council website, you can see the summary. And we'll just kind of pluck through some of these. So some of the ordinances on consideration for the Committee of the Whole includes an ordinance extending the term of Catherine Harris as the interim director of Lincoln Library for a period not to exceed 90 days. So it says this is an extension and authorized increase to a professional contractual service agreement with Catherine Harris to perform library and administrative services duties as required for Lincoln Library. The original agreement's deadline's approaching. It's not to exceed the limits. This ordinance will authorize a continuation of this critical work for Lincoln Library. So if you're familiar with Catherine Harris, she is just a beacon of sun and bringing all kinds of brightness to all people as she's around. You might recognize her as portraying Harriet Tubman as a historical reenactor, but also as a librarian, very well respected in the community when it comes to library science. So she was brought on by Mayor Misty Buscher in a temporary and an interim capacity, and Catherine Harris saying that she wanted to help find the next library director after the former library director, Summer Griffith, was let go by the incoming mayor, Misty Buscher. Summer was hired by former Springfield Mayor Jim Langfelder after kind of tumultuous several directors that one was there for about a year, another one came in on an interim basis, and then Summer was hired, and then there was an election, and we all know elections have consequences. So Misty Buscher brought in Catherine Harris. Buscher as the new mayor, having Catherine do the interim director work to help find a new director, and the new director has been found. You got an ordinance that Springfield aldermen are going to review that would appoint Gwendolyn Harrison as the director of the Lincoln Library. Authorizing this would be, of course, up for debate. You typically hear a lot of different individuals who are being considered for various city positions that they just get up there and they're like, hey, here's my resume, take any questions, and then nobody really has any questions and they move on. I imagine there might be some questions here because you did have the Lincoln Library, which is the public library of Springfield. It's not to be confused with the Abraham Lincoln Presidential Library and Museum. That's a totally different institution. That's actually a state institution, not underneath the Secretary of State's office, but under Governor J.B. Pritzker's office. So that's not what we're talking about. We're not talking about the Abraham Lincoln Presidential Library and Museum. We're talking about the public library for the city of Springfield, Lincoln Library, which is where you go to, get books and have study rooms and meeting rooms and all kinds of different things. So looks like you've got Misty Buscher with the ordinance to have Gwendolyn Harrison be the appointed director of Lincoln Library up for consideration. But you had the Board of Trustees issue a letter to the city of Springfield City Council saying that, Gwendolyn Harrison is qualified to be the director. She's got a library science degree, and she's got, a lifetime of service in the library space. And they ultimately said, while Gwendolyn Harrison is absolutely has the credentials to be the director of Lincoln Library, they can't recommend her because the Board of Trustees says they weren't given the opportunity to interview any of the other applicants. Now, those other applicants, who are they? Surely you would like to know, right? I get it. I understand the insistence on knowing who those applicants are, just to clear up any question of impropriety. But you've got to consider too, some people don't want others to know that they're applying for a job, right? Say one of the applicants works at a state agency in a high-ranking position. If all of a sudden it comes out that they're applying to other jobs, that individual's position could be hindered at their current job. So you can see how there's a reluctance in some cases, and I'm not saying that that's the case here. I'm just trying to think this through, right? Initial blush might be, well, why aren't they releasing the names of the other applicants? But you really got to think a little bit deeper into that and consider maybe these applicants didn't want their names out, unless, of course, they got the job. So that makes this one of those really kind of difficult areas to consider when it comes to selecting new directors coming from one place to the next. So that'll be interesting to hear the conversation play out tonight during the Committee of the Whole about the appointment of Gwendolyn Harrison as the director of Lincoln Library. Some of the other things they're going to do, they've got a sign here that they're looking to approve. Pull this up, and there's a PDF of the sign for the coming attraction 2025, the Shields Sports Park at Legacy Point. So this is just a mock-up of the sign that they're going to likely approve as they get ready to put a shovel in the ground for that long-anticipated sports complex with Shields and Legacy Point. So that's one thing that they're going to take up, is approving the sign, just simply saying, coming 2025, Springfield, Illinois, Sports Facilities Companies, Springfield Clinic, Shields, Legacy Point, and several other names on this sign. But you also have a recognition of the North Mansion block. The ordinance is an agreement accepting facility grant number. So they'll recognize the North Mansion block for having, this public space. They've also got other ordinances giving a grant to the Kidzeum, supplemental appropriation of no more than $355,000 to the Kidzeum. They've talked about the Kidzeum multiple times. It gets a lot of city tax dollars and grants, so we'll see what the reason is for that. You've got another appropriation for AmeriCorps program in the 6th year, providing support for nonprofits. Budget of $107,000, matches 34% from city for administration and supplies, and a stipend of $27,500. You've got another grant here to accept the Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Assistance Grant, and this is from the federal government, and this could be tens of thousands of dollars going into all of that. Plus, you've got an ordinance ratifying the health insurance premiums and health benefits for certain city non-union and non-active retired participants and other employment issues with the city employees. So all of this going to be talked about tonight. There's also a couple of ordinances that Alderman Sean Gregory wanted to get lined up for accessing and tapping into $3 million in grant dollars from the state of Illinois going to the city of Springfield to tackle homelessness. So, that's what's on the docket for tonight, the Springfield City Council Committee of the Whole. And we'll be hearing all of it and more during the council roundup and all of the debates that may or may not spur up from the council meeting. So, looking. Got a few minutes here for you to sound off on the new library director being proposed by Springfield Mayor Misty Buscher, and really just the state of the library for the city of Springfield. Gwendolyn Harrison being appointed by Misty Buscher, Mayor of Springfield, to be the new Lincoln Library director. This after Catherine Harris as the interim director. They're seeking to extend that for no more than 90 days. You can obviously imagine that there's a transition period that needs to happen here, but your thoughts. Listen, the public library is fantastic. I'll tell you one thing that Megan and I use our public library for is if there's a film that we can't find streaming somewhere, likely you can find it at your local library. One that we did recently was The Abyss. James Cameron. For whatever reason, I wanted to watch. Oh, yeah, I know why. It's because of that tragic submersible accident heading down to the Titanic. Rest in peace. Those submersible inhabitants. But we couldn't find The Abyss anywhere on the internet. You couldn't even buy a streaming version on Amazon. So Megan, with her librarian skills, was able to find that indeed one of the libraries in an interlibrary loan capacity had the director's cut of The Abyss on DVD. So we were able to get that and pick it up from our local library. That's just one thing I don't think people realize too much is they have access to the world's information, and you pay your taxes. So go get a library card. Not only can you do the movies of course you got to return it after a certain time or get charged, but just the ability to talk with local librarians and ask them questions, especially your kids. If they're working on a research project and they don't know where to start and you're just clueless as well, talk to a librarian. Go to the library, find out the different types of reference material there are. If you're doing home construction or you're doing some home improvement projects and you're sick of looking at YouTube University because the video quality is just not great, it's not Bob Vila, it's some dude with a cell phone camera just like a cigarette hanging out of his mouth and a beer can holding up a part of a dishwasher or whatever. True story. Megan fixed our clothes washer by watching a video on YouTube of some guy who propped it up with a beer can. But regardless, you can get legitimate, solid information and research techniques from your local library, let alone be entertained, let alone have meeting space. So take advantage of your local library. It's extremely important. You're paying for it, after all, with your tax dollars. So an excellent resource. So we'll be watching what happens at the Springfield City Council tonight when it comes to the local library director job and the appointment of Gwendolyn Harrison. And whether there's going to be debates about the entire process and should the library trustees be more involved in that process. So I'm sure the debate's going to be fascinating.